When I downloaded the new game Quintus and the Absent Truth, I expected a cute and upbeat platformer starring a tiny mouse exploring an oversized world. I mean, the cover art and pictures make it look like the type of story that you might read to a small child. Boy, was I surprised when I discovered that the newest release from East Asia Soft is actually a dark and moody horror game complete with ghosts and a violent conspiracy to uncover. Not that I'm complaining, because this is a much more compelling game than what I thought I was getting myself into. But is it scary enough to recommend? That's what we're gonna find out when I review Quintus and the Absent Truth. The first thing you need to know is that this is not about a small, absent-minded mouse named Quintus. Instead, it's about Alan Shaw, a famous musician who spent the better part of a decade in a funk over the untimely death of his wife, Christy. This has resulted in no new music or concerts, something that has not only frustrated his fans, but also his record label, Andromeda. But that's the least of his worries when Alan's daughter, Lydia, goes missing on her birthday. Now it's up to Alan to investigate his house and form a recording studio for clues before it's too late. Now, it's worth mentioning that Alan is not alone on his journey, as a tiny mouse named Quintus will be tagging along for the ride. You'll use him to reach out-of-the-way objects or slide into small holes that humans could never be able to get into. Early on, he's little more than a support character that you drop off to get the job done. But there are a few times where you'll actually take control of Quintus and go on a separate adventure to help Alan uncover the truth. These are some of the better and more inspired parts of the game, and they add a fun new angle to both the horror and the mystery. Through 4 short chapters, Alan and Quintus explore and investigate several important locations for clues about the missing daughter and what happened to Christy. Most of our job is to just walk through empty corridors, picking up important items that can be used to open up new parts of the level, such as a key or maybe a note. There are also a few simple puzzles that you'll need to solve, such as figuring out what keys to play on a piano or using a drum to solve a key code riddle. To put it bluntly, these puzzles are easy to figure out since the answers are almost always in the same room as the puzzle. But hey, at least the game makes the effort. The problem with Quintus and the Absent Truth is that almost all of the elements are as half-assed as the puzzles. They keep sending us to new locations, yet not really giving us anything to do in them. Even the horror elements are little more than simple jump scares, like a broom falling over or a door slamming shut. Things feel like they're picking up when you see a ghost roaming the halls in Alan's old record label, but trust me, it's not as interesting as it seems. This game keeps hinting at being really compelling and then reveals something that just blunts the momentum entirely. And the simplistic art design certainly doesn't help. No matter where you go, the world is presented using a pencil outline with flat textures. It's supposed to look like the illustrations in a kid's book, and in that sense I really appreciate the artistic approach they took. The problem you'll run into is that it makes every room and hallway look identical. There are times when it's hard to figure out what you're even looking at, which makes getting around a lot harder than it should be. This faux, hand-drawn style was done significantly better in a recent game called Nuts, mostly because that game decided to use shading. I get what Quintus is going for, but in the end, it ends up being more of a liability than an actual benefit. There are also a number of other frustrating gameplay issues that work into keeping this horror game down. It's a lot of weird things too, such as having to hold the X button down while using the right analog stick to rotate objects around that you pick up, something that's just not comfortable on a modern controller. I also found that interacting with specific objects was inconsistent, where sometimes hitting the prompt did absolutely nothing. Even more frustrating is how you occasionally won't be able to pick up the items that Quintus brings to you. The game has a real bad habit of breaking and forcing you to reload the checkpoints, which isn't a lot of fun. But look, even if these issues weren't running rampant throughout the entire adventure, Quintus and the Absent Truth would still be a disjointed horror game that never fully commits to its style or story. There are certainly compelling elements throughout the short story, but the ending is ultimately disappointing and just not very satisfying. Let me put it this way. If you make a game about a world-class, critically acclaimed musician, you absolutely need to make sure that your big climactic song at the end doesn't sound like a bunch of amateurs practicing something they've never played before. I spent the entire ending laughing at Alan's terrible song. Trust me, it's the most memorable thing in this game. Don't let the title fool you. Quintus and the Absent Truth is a dark and dreary horror game about a musician who hasn't been able to work through his grief. Despite a compelling setup and gameplay that has you switching between a human and a mouse, this game fails to live up to its potential. Between the bland, ghost hunting, and simplistic puzzle solving, we find a game that isn't quite sure what it wants to be. Sadly, Quintus is not just absent truth, but also genuine scares and fun level designs. This is a big disappointment. Hey, thanks for watching our review. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new reviews and features almost every day. Now, here's the question I have for you. What is your favorite Ghost game? It can be horror, platformer, role-playing game, it doesn't matter. All I'm looking for is a ghost in a game that you really like. Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back shortly with reviews of Zell, Urbex City Builder, S-Proxy, Loopmancer, Endling, and more. If that sounds good to you, then I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.